The Akaya house in Basius was a sight to behold, radiating sophistication and surrounded by immaculately kept grounds. It served as a testament to the relentless dedication and hard work of Halil Akaya, the man behind its grandeur. The towering gates, the expansive driveway, and the luxurious car parked out front were unmistakable markers of affluence. But hidden beyond those gates were not only the trappings of wealth, but also deeply buried strains. Halil was 42 years old. He was born in a small town in southeastern Turkey. From a young age, he helped his father in running a family-owned auto repair shop. He served in military as well. And then he moved to Istanbul, where he started working as a mechanic and eventually opened his own repair shop. With his hard work and dedication, his business expanded into a chain of auto repair centers. Soon he got married to an elegant woman. Her name was Elif. She belonged to a wealthy family. She was 7 years younger than Halil. As a child, she had dreams of becoming an actress, but reality had different plans for her. She moved to Istanbul to pursue a career in marketing. Elif swiftly adapted to the social elite's glamorous lifestyle, yet her heart felt detached. Their marriage functioned more like a formal alliance than a genuine partnership. On the surface, they appeared harmonious, attending social gatherings, donating generously to charity, and presenting an image of marital bliss. Behind the scenes, however, Elif felt they were merely coexisting. Halil was engrossed in his work, and Elif focused on public appearances and household management. Not long ago, Elif suggested hiring a housekeeper, citing her busy schedule with charity work as the reason. In truth, she simply wanted relief from the day-to-day chores. Through her connections, she found Aishi, a young woman from a rural background who had come to Istanbul in search of work. At 24, Aishi seemed perfect, modest, polite, and diligent. She quickly adjusted to the Akaya household's routines, focusing solely on her duties: cleaning, cooking, and maintaining the house. Aishi's arrival, however, began to stir undercurrents of discomfort. From her first day, Halil seemed unusually attentive to her. Though he avoided overt comments, his lingering presence was hard to ignore. Aishi, cautious by nature, tried to stay out of his way, but her attempts only seemed to escalate his interest. Meanwhile, Elif, engrossed in her social endeavors, either didn't notice or chose to overlook these subtle shifts. As the days passed, Halil's behavior became increasingly unsettling. He would find reasons to talk to Aishi, ask intrusive questions, or linger too close for comfort. Aishi, though deeply uneasy, feared losing her job and the stability it provided for her family. She resolved to endure the situation, but found it increasingly challenging to hide her anxiety. Then one day, Aishi disappeared without a trace. Elif was puzzled at first, assuming Aishi might be unwell. But as days turned into weeks with no word, her concern deepened. Calls went unanswered, and even Aishi's family had no idea of her whereabouts. The mystery unsettled everyone. When the police got involved, their investigation unearthed troubling inconsistencies. Surveillance footage revealed Aishi leaving the house, but gaps in the timeline hinted at foul play. A neighbor mentioned seeing Halil's car late at night, a detail that planted a seed of doubt in Elif's mind. Gradually, memories of Halil's unusual behavior surfaced, fueling her suspicions. The situation reached a climax when police executed a search warrant at the Akaya home. In the garage, they uncovered evidence linking Halil to Aishi's disappearance, including her belongings and traces of blood. Confronted with mounting proof, Halil confessed. He admitted to luring Aishi back to the house under false pretenses, assaulting her, and ultimately causing her death in a fit of rage. The revelations shattered Elif's world. As Halil faced life in prison, she grappled with the weight of her guilt, wondering if her preoccupation with appearances had blinded her to the signs. The Akaya house, once a symbol of success, became a haunting reminder of the tragedy it concealed.
In April 2017, a video appeared online showing a young woman with her arms bandaged up to the elbows. She stared intensely at the camera, her youthful appearance contradicting the shocking crime she was accused of. Cassandra wrinkled her nose, poured bleach on the bathroom floor, and prepared the house for a big party. Cleaning the place wasn't easy. It had to look presentable. Her boyfriend, Johnny, helped seal the door frames with a white adhesive to block the smell, making sure no one could detect the odor of two bodies upstairs. In the small town of Lawrenceville, Georgia, strange events unfolded over a week. 3 couples in separate homes were attacked, with no signs of forced entry. On April 2nd, 2017, the first couple was found in their bed with their throats slit. The house was ransacked. 6 days later, on April 8th, the second couple was attacked as they entered their home, sprayed with bear repellent and beaten with metal bats. The next day, a third couple was found bleeding on the bathroom floor, barely alive. Investigators found connections between the couples. The third couple used the second couple's car, and intimate videos of the second pair were on the first couple's phone. Police hoped for answers from Johnny Ryder, 19, and Cassandra Bjorge, 17, once they regained consciousness in the hospital. Cassandra and Johnny were deeply infatuated. To Johnny, Cassandra was perfect, his soulmate. A trained martial artist, Cassandra had given up her practice due to emotional struggles, but her intense personality remained. Despite dating for only a few weeks, Johnny felt like they had been together forever. Police arrived at a suburban home that seemed eerily sealed shut. Inside, the house was in disarray, with cigarette butts, dirty dishes, and moldy food scattered around. Upstairs, they found 2 bodies, a man beaten and stabbed in his sleep, and an elderly woman, similarly killed. The couple, Wendy and Randall Bjorge, were Cassandra's grandparents. The day after the bodies were discovered, Johnny sent a chilling voice message to his mom, asking for forgiveness. Shortly after, Johnny and Cassandra were found unconscious in another apartment, having attempted to harm themselves. When Cassandra woke up in the hospital, she initially blamed her depression, but eventually admitted to the crime. She told police how she and Johnny waited for her grandparents to sleep before attacking. Johnny started by beating her grandfather. Cassandra, hearing the noise, struck her grandmother with a crowbar. The couple tied up the grandparents and demanded the safe code. Johnny stabbed her grandfather while Cassandra opened the safe, which contained $1,000. The couple used the money to buy food and party supplies, continuing to live in the house for a week with the bodies upstairs. The couple spent the money recklessly, even using Cassandra's grandmother's bank card when the cash ran out. They invited friends over for a party, masking the smell of decomposition with bleach and sealing the upstairs doors. None of the friends knew about the bodies in the house. Cassandra and Johnny's crime spree didn't stop there. On April 8th, they attacked Johnny's sister, Melissa, and her boyfriend with bear repellent and a baseball bat. Despite their injuries, Melissa and her boyfriend fought back, forcing Johnny and Cassandra to flee in Melissa's car. Eventually, police tracked the couple to a friend's apartment. Surrounded, they tried to harm themselves again, but were arrested. In custody, Cassandra remained emotionless, recounting the crimes in chilling detail. She described her resentment toward her grandparents, who had raised her after removing her from an abusive home. Though they had loved her, Cassandra claimed they had become overbearing. At their trial, Johnny and Cassandra pleaded guilty. They were sentenced to 2 life terms plus 21 years each, with eligibility for parole after 60 years. Many debated whether either would have committed these crimes without the other's influence, though most believed Cassandra was the mastermind. While Johnny expressed remorse, Cassandra showed none. The story ended with her relatives devastated, mourning the betrayal and loss of 2 people who had cared for her deeply. Melissa was kicked in the stomach multiple times, but managed to grab Cassandra's hair and rip out a clump. During this, the attackers kept spraying bear repellent, which mostly hit Melissa and her boyfriend. The struggle continued, with the attackers having the upper hand. It's uncertain what would have happened if Melissa's mom hadn't arrived and opened the front door. The attackers managed to escape through the back, but not before leaving Melissa with severe injuries, requiring 7 stitches and staples for a large gash on her head. Both she and her boyfriend were bruised, and he also had a broken tooth. Shocking was that Melissa didn't even recognize her brother Johnny and his girlfriend Cassandra, whom she'd only met once before. To make matters worse, the couple stole Melissa's car, leaving behind Randall Bjorge's vehicle. which they had initially used and parked in the backyard. Johnny and Cassandra had originally planned to hide in Melissa's home, waiting for family members to return one by one so they could kill them individually. However, they hadn't expected Melissa to return with her boyfriend, nor for Cassandra to drop Randall's car keys during the attack, forcing them to flee in Melissa's car. Later, the lingering bear repellent fumes caused severe irritation for both Johnny and Cassandra. They stopped at a store to buy milk, hoping it would relieve their burning skin. Meanwhile, police visited Melissa's house to take statements and became curious about the car the attackers had used. Checking the plates, officers discovered it belonged to Randall Bjorge. This led them to revisit his house, where they found the crime scene. In custody, Cassandra revealed their plan. First, they killed her grandparents. Next, they intended to kill Johnny's family, who disapproved of their relationship. Cassandra claimed she had issues with her grandparents because they kicked her out for staying out late. She also lived briefly in Johnny's car after leaving home. Although she had thought about killing her mother and stepfather later, Johnny discouraged it, citing the potential risk of encountering weapons at her mother's house. Cassandra's grandparents, Wendy and Randall, had fought to protect her from abuse in her mother's home, even obtaining emergency custody of her. Despite this, Cassandra chose to turn against the people who had saved her. Wendy had been aware of abuse allegations against Cassandra's stepfather and had taken steps to shield her, yet Cassandra felt her grandparents had outlived their purpose. Police noted the living room in Wendy and Randall's house was filled with pictures of Cassandra, showing their love and devotion. Yet Cassandra told police her grandparents no longer showed interest in her and only lectured her. She resented their disapproval of Johnny, and Johnny's family also disliked Cassandra. Together, the couple decided that both families had to die for them to start a new life together. Cassandra and Johnny dreamed of moving to Pensacola, Florida, but their actions suggested little thought about the long-term consequences. After killing Wendy and Randall, they lived in the house for a week, attempting to mask the smell of decomposition. They even invited people over for a party, lying about where her grandparents were. Only 2 guests, who supplied them with weed, came, and neither suspected the truth. Eventually, police traced them to the home of Johnny's old friend, Jason. Surrounded by law enforcement, the couple attempted to harm themselves but were arrested. Cassandra later claimed she and Johnny felt more like Bonnie and Clyde than Romeo and Juliet. At their trial, they both pleaded guilty. Johnny apologized, showing remorse, but Cassandra remained cold and silent. They were sentenced to 2 life terms plus 21 years, eligible for parole only after 60 years. The courtroom and public debated whether either could have committed the crimes alone, with many believing Cassandra was the driving force. Cassandra's betrayal deeply hurt her surviving relatives, who couldn't fathom how someone so loved and protected could commit such heinous acts against her own family. The tragic tale concluded with the unimaginable loss of 2 devoted grandparents. Sometimes reality is scarier than any horror movie, and this story proves it. One cold February night in 2018, a call to 911 revealed a shocking truth.
911, what's the emergency?
My wife and I need an ambulance for bleeding.
You said someone was in your house?
Yes.
Tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. Someone's in the house, and next thing I know, I wake up next to my wife and we're bleeding.
You woke up to her scream, and tall figure with ski mask starts fighting with you with a knife.
See, I felt something sharp.
Mike claimed a masked intruder attacked him and Susan, but the real story was far more sinister. When the cops arrived, they discovered a horrifying scene. Susan was bleeding, and the marks on her body indicated a violent struggle, while the house was unnaturally calm. The locks were undamaged, and there were no indications of the forced entry. Everything outside the house was flawless, as nothing had occurred. On the other hand, inside the house, there were more questions than answers. Detectives tried to get the details of what had happened that evening, but Mike could not satisfy them. The security camera footage was also missing. And above all, the biggest question was, why did Susan's wounds seem so intentional? Hello, friends. Welcome to True Crime Records. Subscribe now to stay updated with the latest true crime stories. Come find out as we explore the high-profile case of Mike and Susan Royale. Mike and Susan Royale were the envy of many. He was a successful businessman, and she was a charming woman. They often seen dining at high-end restaurants and vacationing at luxury resorts. Their Naplesville, Florida mansion reflected their wealth and status. But while Mike's professional life flourished, his personal life was complicated. Mike's first marriage to Dee Dee Hoffman lasted 25 years. Dee Dee described him as kind and dependable, but his workaholic lifestyle left her and their children in the shadows, leading to their quiet divorce in 2005. Shortly after, Mike met Susan, a 38-year-old nurse with charisma and energy. They married in 2007, hoping for a fresh start. In the beginning, everything seems perfect, but by 2015, tension between Mike and Susan had grown. Susan always had a problem with Mike's eldest daughter, Caroline, leading to heated arguments. Susan did not hide her dislike for Caroline, and mostly when she became furious on her actions, she would send Mike sharp, angry messages about his daughter's behavior. Susan wanted and tried to push her out of Mike's life. In an interview, Caroline told the media that how much Mike was under the control of Susan.
She had such walls around him. He wouldn't call me unless he was in a car alone. He wasn't allowed to take my call in front of her.
By the end of 2017, tension in the family had reached to a boiling point. It was the time when Caroline was planning for her wedding, and Mike was eager to fulfill all the dreams of her daughter on her big day. Initially, he allocated $100,000 for the event. However, the cost of the wedding kept increasing, and the final budget raised to $250,000. During the whole wedding, Susan remained upset. She was furious about the expenses.
The last thing I saw before walking down the aisle at my wedding was this white scar from here to here. And in my mind, I was like, what is that?
In November 2017, Mike told Caroline that Susan had physically confronted him several times on the issue of wedding expenses. One day, again on the same issue, she became so furious that she again had a fight with Mike. During the fight, she threw a phone at him and began to hit him. To Mike's surprise, after attacking on him, she herself called the police. Perhaps she was planning to present her version of events first and avoid any charges, but when the police arrived, they found the clear signs of the fight: a broken phone on the floor and overturned furniture. The officers understood that there was a quarrel between husband and wife. They verbally advised both of them to resolve their issues and left. On February 3, 2018, Mike and Susan had dinner, hoping to reconcile. Instead, it ended in another argument. Returning home separately, they went to their rooms. Around midnight, Mike entered Susan's room and a confrontation escalated. Susan later described how Mike attacked her with a knife, leaving her injured and terrified. Desperate, Susan convinced Mike to stop by promising not to file for divorce. Mike panicked, quickly fabricating a story about a masked intruder. He even deleted surveillance footage to support his claims. But when police examined the scene, they found no signs of a break-in. Surveillance footage from the restaurant showed Mike and Susan leaving separately and avoiding contact, casting doubt on Mike's story. Investigators discovered bloodstains throughout the house, indicating a violent struggle. Medical experts confirmed Susan's injuries were deliberate, not accidental. As Mike's lies unraveled, his arrest sent shockwaves through his family and friends. Dee Dee, his ex-wife, was in disbelief. He was always kind and steady, she said, but prosecutors painted a different picture. A man desperate to avoid losing his wealth and control, driven to a reckless act. Mike's lawyers argued he was a victim in an unstable marriage, citing Susan's past aggressive behavior. They claimed Susan's injuries were self-inflicted, a desperate attempt to provoke him. But Susan's legal team countered. questioning why Mike fabricated the intruder story if he had nothing to hide. The trial revealed even more damning evidence. Mike had been registered on multiple dating sites, pursuing a life without Susan. His attempts to erase footage and his inconsistent accounts painted him as manipulative and deceitful. In December 2019, the jury delivered its verdict.
The person I heard through the evidence and the witnesses was somebody who was cold, they were brutal. On count one, the attempted first-degree premeditated murder, I'm going to sentence you to 30 years imprisonment in the park.
Mike Royale was guilty of attempted manslaughter, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Even behind bars, Mike's dark side emerged. Rumors swirled that he tried to hire someone to harm Susan. While these claims lacked sufficient evidence, they added to his tarnished reputation. Meanwhile, Susan filed for divorce and fought for her share of the mansion. For her, the house symbolized both a traumatic past and her fight for freedom. Mike's fall from grace, from a successful businessman to a convicted criminal, is a stark reminder of how unchecked ambition and hidden resentments can destroy lives. His lies cost him his freedom, while Susan paid with her peace of mind. Who's the real villain? Who's the victim? In the end, the answers may never be fully clear. But one thing is certain: secrets, lies, and the thirst for control come with a heavy price.
Sherry Coleman and her two sons were strangled in their sleep. Who was responsible for these murders? Why it happened? If you don't believe in evil, I hope you will now, when you will come to know the reality that why this innocent woman and her children were murdered in their bed at night. Hello, friends. Welcome to the True Crime Record. Subscribe now to stay updated with our latest true crime stories. Come find out as we explore this high-profile case. Today, we will talk about the Coleman family murders. Chris Coleman was born on March 20th, 1977, to a family of Christian pastors. In his childhood, he was highly obedient to his parents. He took part in all church activities. He was also a good student and athlete. However, he was also known for being kind, sensitive, and introvert. When he was in high school, a Marine Corps recruiter visited his school and discussed military service with students. Chris became so inspired by his personality that he decided to join the armed forces after high school graduation. There he worked with canines, and that's where he met his future wife, Sherry Weiss, who was in the Air Force at that time. They got married in 1997 and had 2 kids, Garrett and Gavin. They started living in Colombia. Chris left his Army service and got a job of working as bodyguard for Joyce Meyer, who was a world-famous Christian televangelist. During this job, Chris made a dangerous enemy somewhere out there in the non-religious world. On November 2008, he started receiving threats through emails. Chris filed a police report that he was being stalked by some sicko. Luckily, a detective sergeant just lived across the road, and he set up a camera in his house to keep a check. However, they did not catch anybody. On 5th of May 2009 at 6:43 a.m., Chris called the detective from Jim that his wife is not attending the phone. Can you please go and check if anything is fine? The detective sergeant went to Chris' house and he found the Coleman family dead. He saw the walls were spray painted all over the house with strange messages from the killer that I told you this would happen. When Coleman reached the home, he was shocked to see all that. Police tore the place apart carefully to find any evidence. They also questioned Coleman, who told the police that he left the house at 5:40 a.m. in the morning for Jim, but police was able to tell that they had been murdered before Chris left the house, because when the police found the bodies, they were stiff cold. They were dead for a while. So the police brought this up to Chris. After the investigation, the police was quickly able to trace that the IP address of that hate-filled emails was of Chris's own house. Then they found a text message from Sherry's phone that she sent to her friend that Chris wants a divorce. She also told her friend that if something happened to her, Chris could be involved in it. Police found Chris's DNA under Sherry's fingernails and also found on Chris's credit card statement that he had purchased a can of spray paint a few months before. Police also found videos from his computer with a woman. Her name was Tara Linz. Chris was having an affair with her. Tara was the best friend of Sherry. She lived in the St. Petersburg, Florida. Police also investigated from her, but other than having an affair with Chris, she was not involved in the murders. Chris was arrested on May 19th when the medical examiner confirmed that the family had been killed around 3 a.m., and Chris was at home at that time. The police waited so long because they wanted to make sure they had completed their investigation. Now police had immense evidences against Chris. After the trial, it was actually hard for jury to get a unanimous verdict, but then from one of the photos of Tara and Chris, jury found a printed date of October 2008 on the back of the photo, which confirmed that Chris and Tara were having the affair before they admitted they had, which increased the likelihood of Chris plotting the murder as a result of the affair. Jury sentenced him 3 life sentences and a verdict of never to be released. Even in prison, Chris proclaimed his innocence, but all of his appeals were rejected. So Chris Coleman will remain in prison for whole life. If you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe.
I'm sorry for what I did, but that's hardly enough.
I think that's the one baffling part of this case, that to this day we can't understand why he committed this mass murder.
Imagine a quiet suburban neighborhood shattered by a gruesome crime. A teenage boy accused of murdering his entire family. What drove him to commit such a chilling act? Was it a dark secret, a hidden rage, or something even more sinister? Stay tuned as we unravel the shocking truth behind this horrifying family tragedy. The Thanksgiving Massacre of 1998, the case of Seth Privacky. On Thanksgiving Day in 1998, a seemingly ordinary family in Muskegon, Michigan, gathered to celebrate. Linda Privacky was showering, while her husband, Stephen, was out picking up his father, John. In the living room, their son, Jed, 19, waited for his girlfriend, April, to arrive. Upstairs, however, Seth Privacky, the family's youngest son at 18, was loading his father's .22 caliber Ruger. When Seth came downstairs, he shot Jed in the head without warning. He then moved to the garage, where he waited for his father and grandfather to return. As they arrived, Seth ambushed them, firing 3 shots. One into his father and 2 into his grandfather. Finally, when his mother emerged from the shower, he shot her as well. Moments later, Jed's girlfriend April arrived at the house. Seth let her in, but when she saw the bodies, she gasped in horror. Seth shot her too, making her his 5th victim. A chilling discovery. The massacre might have gone unnoticed for longer, had April's parents not become concerned when she didn't return home that evening. They drove to the Privacky residence and discovered the scene of horror. The bodies of the family members, blood everywhere, and a staged attempt to make the crime look like a botched robbery. Police were immediately called. One victim, Seth's grandfather, was lying in the driveway, while the rest were inside. Only one person was unaccounted for: Seth. Investigators quickly identified him as the prime suspect. The manhunt. Seth fled as police arrived. His best friend, Stephen Wallace, who had helped him stage the robbery, was arrested and confessed to Seth's crimes, revealing details of how Seth had methodically killed his family and even called him afterward, saying, "It's done." When the police was searching the house, they saw a boy was hiding in the woods behind the home. It was Stephen Wallace. He made no attempt to flee. He told the police that Seth had just killed his parents. Police launched a manhunt for Seth. Next morning, news of what had taken place at Privacky House spread like wildfire. Seth's father was a teacher at Wath's Puffer Intermediate School. everybody in town was feeling sad on this tremendous loss. Gianna Simonelli was also a student of Puffer School. That day she was also very disturbed due to this news. It was an awful rainy day. She was driving along Weber Road. She saw a hitchhiker thumbing for a ride in the rain. She stopped the car and stranger sat in. It was Seth, and she knew exactly what he was accused of. She was terrified, but she kept her cool. She acted as if she knew nothing. She dropped the Seth where he asked her to stop. When he left, Janet immediately called the police. Soon the police arrived at the address where the Seth had been dropped of. They discovered him hiding in a barn, shivering from cold and rain. Seth gave himself up to the police without any resistance. After 13 hours on the run, Seth was caught hiding in a barn, thanks to a college student who recognized him as she gave him a ride. Seth surrendered without resistance, but his actions left investigators and the community shocked. The confession and motive. Seth admitted to the murders, but his explanation was unsettlingly vague. He claimed his family was ganging up on him, and his father had recently asked him to move out of the house. Detectives uncovered a history of minor legal trouble, including shoplifting and selling alcohol to minors, which had earned Seth probation. He was also diagnosed with depression and prescribed the antidepressant Wellbutrin. Seth's behavior in custody was chilling. He described his actions calmly, devoid of emotion, as though he were recounting a mundane event. Despite his confession, his motive remained unclear, leaving friends, neighbors, and detectives struggling to understand why he committed such an unthinkable crime. The aftermath. Both Seth and Stephen were charged. Stephen was accused of being an accessory after the fact, but was acquitted in 1999. Seth, however, was sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading no contest to 5 counts of first-degree murder. In the years following his imprisonment, Seth maintained that he was not a monster, writing letters to the press to refute claims about his character. In one such letter, he claimed to have been under the influence of LSD at the time of the murders, blaming the drug for his actions. However, there was no evidence to confirm this, and his story only deepened the mystery. A tragic end. Seth's time in prison ended tragically. In 2010, at the age of 30, he and 2 fellow inmates attempted an escape by stealing a truck and crashing it through the prison's fences. Guards pursued them, and Seth was shot and killed when he refused to stop running.
Ironically, he died in the same fashion that all 5 of his victims did.
You think of irony, karma, what you sow, so shall you reap.
His death was ironic, as it mirrored the violence he had inflicted on his own family. Unanswered questions. The motive behind Seth Privacky's actions remains a mystery. His strained relationship with his father, feelings of isolation, and potential substance use may have contributed, but none fully explain his decision to kill his entire family and Jed's girlfriend on Thanksgiving Day. His death at 30 ensured that the full truth of his actions would never be revealed. Conclusion. Seth Privacky's case is a haunting reminder of how unresolved emotions and untreated issues can spiral into unimaginable tragedy. While the community may never understand what drove him to commit these horrific acts, it's a story that continues to resonate as a warning about the complexities of mental health, family dynamics, and violence.